Welcome again to the Future of the Future show. I am your host, Mateo Berrejicho, and I will be speaking today to Ben Mappen, CEO and founder at Team. Ben has been working in the technology industry for a while now, successful exits on his back, a serial entrepreneur, we could say. And look, I've been working in related roles to procurement for many years of my life. I don't do it anymore, but I will say for 10 years, I led procurement teams. And it can be difficult when you are trying to find the right vendors, to find the information, to look them up, to really score them and really understand what is it that they do, to prepare a request for proposal, to send it out, to get the answers. So many things that are going on there when you're doing strategic sourcing that are so hard. And I met Ben a few weeks ago, and we started talking about what he's doing and the problems that he's solving. And I can tell you, as an experienced person in procurement, that he has something very special going on. So today we're going to talk a little bit about that and his journey as a technologist and as an entrepreneur and some other great stuff. So, Ben, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm really, really excited to be doing this podcast with you. And I'm happy to just introduce myself and tell you about Team and part of the origin story. So I'm Ben, CEO, co-founder of Team. I live in San Diego with my wife and two young kids, but spent 15 plus years in the Bay Area prior to this. This is my third startup. Had a couple exits before. Procurement, which you have a background in. I'm actually this is my first stint in procurement, and so I'm learning a lot. But I'll circle back to kind of how I landed here, which was from developer tooling. So it's quite a jump in industry, but there is a connection, I promise you. So what is Team? Team automates supplier research for procurement and sourcing teams. And so the specific problem that we solve is that these sourcing teams are they're always underwater and understaffed, and they are trying to manage like literally hundreds of transactions at any given point in time. And that can be upcoming renewals or incoming purchase requests from folks in the business. And because they're so short-staffed and because of how time-consuming it takes to do research on vendors and suppliers, they can only really put like maximum attention into a very small percentage of these deals. So they, kind of cherry pick the most expensive and the most strategic deals, and then the kind of the fat middle of the bell curve just flows through the procurement process without much attention. And they're not able to use their unique skill set around talking to suppliers and negotiating. And so that is a big problem because it's a massive inefficiency gap. And so we've built Team to enable them to increase their throughput between 10x and 50x. And we're using AI to automate that upfront task of doing research on suppliers to help them identify, okay, who do we even need to talk to? So that's what we do in a nutshell. And then the origin story comes back to the last startup that I was a co-founder of, which was called Armory. It was a developer tooling company. We sold continuous deployment software to large enterprises, and I ran sales and also customer success there. And at Armory, I was probably a part of hundreds, if not thousands, of sales cycles. And the observation that I had from the sales side was that there were countless inefficiencies on both sides, buy side and sell side. And it's kind of maddening, especially when you're a sales guy who wants to get deals done. And you're interacting with the stakeholder on the other side, like the champion stakeholders and also procurement teams, and it's just taking forever. So we sold the company last year, and then after we sold it, I had some time to kind of reflect and think about some of these problems. And you start thinking about it, and like just my nature as an entrepreneur is to be like super curious. And then once I get attached to an idea, you pull on that thread enough, and then it becomes an obsession. And so it started out from the sales angle, but then quickly we realized that there's an underserved persona, which are strategic sourcing professionals. Developers get every single tool. Like everybody's trying to build super cool technology for developers, but very few companies are building cool technology for procurement and sourcing folks. So we saw that as an opportunity. And also with the proliferation and advent of AI technology and just how fast that space is moving, we can apply that technology to a really interesting use case, which is supplier research and automating all of the things that sourcing and procurement folks have to do to understand kind of niche markets and any type of like software market that or category that they're not experts in. So we kind of bring that expertise to them instantly.
I love the story. So you were selling, and then you were getting in touch with a lot of people from procurement that had a hard time, maybe even learning about you, and then understanding what it is that you were selling, right? Or doing the research and looking for alternative. If you're in procurement, you always need to look at alternatives, right? So maybe they were comparing you to people that were doing something completely different just because they weren't getting exactly what you were doing. And so that's where you kind of found that pain point, but then you address it by helping them actually.
Yeah, I'll give you a concrete example, which came up all the time, which is we start talking to a prospective customer, they bring us in, and we get, to a point in the process where we get introduced to procurement. And then procurement says, okay, we need to do the 3 bids and a buy process. Right. And so, okay, who are the competitors? And they're talking with their internal stakeholders and then identifying the other vendors. And then they're like, okay, 2 weeks later, they send us this massive list of questions that we need to answer because they have to compare 3 or 5 or 10 suppliers side by side. And that takes so much time. And then when we actually, now that we're doing team, we're interviewing these strategic sourcing professionals and procurement professionals. And they tell us when they're talking to the business, like the person who wants to buy something, they almost always have, one vendor that they love, that they used at a previous company. And they just want that tool, but it may not be the right tool for your specific company for a variety of reasons, growth reasons or compliance reasons. And so you really do need to do more diligence. And the I guess the breadth of options in the market are actually quite large. Like it's a highly fragmented market typically in software. And so you have many options, and there are lots of suppliers that you should be talking to get the best price. And as when you create an environment of competition, you're going to save a bunch of money. You're going to create this pressure on the suppliers to give you the best deal and maximize value for your company. So we help enable that.
And so right now AI is everywhere, right? And some sourcing professionals might be using ChatGPT to do some of the search, right? I mean, Google search as it used to exist will not exist anymore in a not so distant future, right? But you're taking it many steps further, right? Can you tell us a little bit about what's special about your AI solution and how team learns and continuously learns about what type of questions to ask, how to draft an RFP or an RFI or RFQ, how to dig in the market and source for solutions? What's special about it?
Yeah. So we've built an agentic system. Agents are kind of the buzzword of 2024. So we also have multiple agents which are going and automating human tasks. So we have an agent which goes and understands all of the software categories, and we have about 1,000 or so software categories that are classified, and we know a lot about those categories. Then we have another agent which goes and understands all of the different suppliers and products that fall into a category. So to take an example, like CRM software, we would classify Pipedrive and HubSpot and Salesforce, Sales Cloud, and a bunch of others. And then we have another agent, and this is kind of where the secret sauce is, to understand the feature level capability of each product. And so stepping back to the use case and how things are done today, a business stakeholder or a procurement or sourcing person is going to be on Google. They're going to be searching on G2 and ChatGPT, trying to understand, okay, who is this supplier? What do they do? What capabilities do they have? And can they do that research themselves? Absolutely. Is it going to take hours or even weeks of time to compile this information? Yes. And so we automate that by deploying hundreds or even thousands of AI tasks whenever the user wants to. And we go and we ingest all of the content from the supplier website, including documentation, marketing content, watch demo videos, and then we match the content on their website to the customer's business requirements. So they can tell us things like, okay, we need it to be SOC 2 compliant. We need 24/7 support, follow the sun. We need these 10 or 100 capabilities. And so we're doing like essentially a semantic match on a string, like in plain English, against the content that we ingest using LLMs from the company website. So it's basically doing what a human would do, but it's doing it much faster. And that saves them a bunch of time.
I can imagine. I've been there, folks. I've done that myself, and I know how that can look like. And also, the reality is what you said, right? I mean, you are on the sales side, and all you sell are, deployment tools. Then you know about that because you're doing that time and time and time and time and over again, right? But if you are on the procurement side, today you are doing deployment tools. Tomorrow you are doing professional services for marketing. Tomorrow you are doing real estate. Tomorrow, yes, there are teams that will divide it between different things. But even if you are just one person in a huge organization tackling IT, you are going to be talking a lot about a lot of different things in IT, and it's so hard to stay up to date, right? So
that's a great point.
Changes the game.
It's impossible to be an expert in every niche software category. And as a central procurement person, there's, I guess, kind of a term that's used in the industry around earning a seat at the table. And how do you prove your value to the business versus being like an order taker? You don't just want to push paper and get deals done. You want to show that you can be a strategic partner for the business. And you do that by coming with like real intelligence. So someone wants this tool, they may have a good reason, but hey, let's consider all these other things using data.
Ben, you co-founded multiple startups before, right? How have your previous experiences shaped the way that you approach building team today, or in the future, if you do another one, what are the things you learned that changed the way that you do it now?
Yeah, great question. There are, I don't know, so many lessons learned over the years. So I'll answer this in a couple of ways. There are some constants, like there are fundamental constants, North Stars, which I think apply to any startup. And for me, those are customer obsession and speed of execution. And like without those, I don't see success in any form. Like especially when you're just starting out, especially when you are pre-product market fit, speed and talking to customers, listening to their needs in an unbiased way, in an objective way, is super critical. And then everything else, like I used to feel opinionated on, I don't know, like culture. I used to feel opinionated on, do we have to be in the office 5 days a week or remote? And I think over time and observing my own experience at startups and seeing others, there's no magic formula for success. Success can come in lots of different shapes. And, I'll just take some of these examples. So like remote company versus in office, like everyone, these big tech companies you read in the news are like mandating back in the office. Like they probably have a good reason, but there are on the other side, countless examples of successful remote first companies. Like, GitLab is one of them. I think WordPress or Automatic is another. There's like so many, like open source versus closed source. Like there's, really, really strong arguments in either case, but I don't think that one is necessarily better than the other. And so the foundation for me is just customers and speed. So I take those lessons and, we're applying them here. Another thing I'll say is that we're a very early stage startup. We started the company in January and we've been building. We came out of stealth about 6 weeks ago. So it's like super early days, and we're also only 4 people. So the challenges that we have are very different than the challenges that a company, even with 10 people or 25 people or 50 people would have. There's like inflection points to these. And so the lessons that you take from previous companies you have to apply them like for the right stage.
For the right stage at the right time. I love it. So customer obsession, speed of execution. Let's clarify for the audience. When you say speed of execution, what do you mean? Right? Just make it very graphic for people. You're building a product, building an MVP. What? Explain more.
Yeah, let me see. So there's a saying that goes something like a um, a good plan executed today is better than a great plan executed tomorrow, or something like that. So like taking action today is so important. Like when you're doing a startup, that like early stage startup, like you're faced with basically with death, you know,
Yeah.
because you have, no customers or a few customers, and you're burning cash. And so there's this impending point in time where you run out of cash. And so every single day matters. And so, sending that email today instead of tomorrow, even if, you're going to spend a little bit extra time, make that email like perfect tomorrow, send it right now, or get that marketing campaign out the door today, not tomorrow. Ship that feature today, not tomorrow. Just having that attitude of like time is so critical and speed is so critical, and like there is no tomorrow. Having that urgency is really important, especially in the early days. But I think all the time. I'll tie another example, which is Amazon, and Jeff Bezos has this famous and simple framework for decision making called, like, I think it's called type 1, type 2 decisions. So like a type 1 decision is a door that you can't walk back from. So for those decisions, you really want to take your time and do the proper diligence and research and talk to enough people, and approach that thoughtfully. Whereas a type 2 decision is something that has less long-term impact. And so for type 2 decisions, you just want to like not linger, and you want to make them like as fast as humanly possible.
I love it. And then in terms of customer obsession, how does that look like, right? I mean, how many people should we be talking? It's a matter of a number of people that you should be talking to on a weekly basis. Is it a matter of how fast you reach out? Is it a matter, how will you define that?
Yeah. And I'll say this through the lens of like an enterprise B2B software company. Consumer is likely different, consulting is likely different. So for us and for the companies that I've been a part of, which are enterprise software companies, um, I think it's very easy to develop a hypothesis or a strong opinion on a strategy or a feature or some type of direction from talking to like one or two customers. They may give you an idea, or you may like realize something in that conversation, which like leads you down a path of like, okay, I want to explore this. And so um, getting ideas is fairly cheap, but validating ideas is extremely hard and time consuming. So getting the idea can take one or two conversations with a customer.
Right.
Validating it could take up to 50. Like
Right.
let's just say between 10 and 50. So like you really have to talk to a high volume of customer, and then like I'll say 10 is the minimum if you're good at it and good at identifying the right patterns and good at of choosing the right people that fit the right persona. But usually it's not going to be the case. And so you're going to be talking to a bunch of different people who look and smell different. They come from different companies, different size companies, different industries. And you're going to have to try to identify that pattern in a different way using kind of like this multivariate problem. And so it may take 15 or 20 or 25 of these conversations before you can see that pattern, which is, you're comparing it against this idea or this hypothesis that you had previously. And so I guess the TLDR here is you have to talk to a ton of people.
Right.
And it takes patience. But then back to the speed thing, like you have to figure out a way as a startup founder to get to people and to ask for help, ask for introductions, and just hustle.
Um, and that is you. Do you have a product leader that is doing all of this, or in a startup of 4 to 5 people, that is really you, Ben, and you are doing that hustle and just reaching out? to everyone that you think it's
Yeah.
valuable?
Yeah. Again, back to stage of company. So for us, it's me. It's like I have a co-founder too. He's technical, he's writing code. So it's really me who's selling, who's doing customer development, customer discovery. And, in the early days of startup building, um, literally everybody in the company should either be doing one or both of these activities, which are talking to customers, aka selling, aka like customer discovery, or writing code. And if you find yourself doing something that's outside of those two activities, then you're probably, should be refocusing your time.
Got it.
As you grow, of course, you're gonna, we'll eventually hire, product managers, VP product, like build out a company and departments, and so things will likely change. But in the beginning, certainly pre-product market fit, this is not an activity that can be outsourced
Right.
to a consultant or even an early employee. This is something that founders have to do.
Do you have a favorite phase, or do you love the whole process? You've done this a few times, right? And so you've grown and then you exited. Um, is it when you have to go back to being the founder and doing everything, is it fun for you? I guess it is because you keep doing it, right? But how does it feel uh, when you go back to it?
All stages are fun for me. I think that the early stage has a different tone of excitement because it's so new and um, there's so much potential, I guess. But each stage, like literally there are inflection points. Either you can kind of bucket them by either like funding round stage or headcount stage. And right now we're 4 people, so it's like it's not. I wouldn't say it's hard to get people on the same page. It's not hard to foster innovation with a very small team because we're all like feeling this urgency. We're all like focused on pretty much the same thing. We're talking all the time, every single day. But when you get to 10 people, there's an inflection point. 25 people, there's an inflection point. And you have to build these, hopefully for us, a light process to improve communication. But all parts are fun. All have different challenges.
Do you ever see yourself? A lot of founders make the jump maybe to they have a few exits and then they become investors themselves, right? And they just stop building, they just help others build. Do you see yourself doing that, or do you like being in the weeds and you are a serial entrepreneur yourself?
Um, I I think that well, it's hard to say. What is easy to say is that startups are extremely hard, and the they require so much time and sacrifice. And this is like kind of obvious because people talk about it all the time. But it's almost like here's an analogy, like having kids. So like we have 2 kids,
Yeah.
and before you have kids, you hear from other parents how much work it is and how tired you are, and like academically you understand that. But until you actually have like the baby and you're holding them and you're trying to like, why are they crying? Like until you actually experience it, you don't really know. And so the same is true with startups. Like everyone, like that it's hard, but until you actually experience it, you don't know how hard it really is. And doing startups are incredibly hard and they require incredible sacrifice, just like having kids requires incredible sacrifice. Like I don't have hobbies. Like I barely have any friends. Like those are the things that you sacrifice when you choose to do a startup or when you choose to become a parent. So to tie this back to your question, um, if and when team is like massively, massively successful and we have a huge exit, hopefully all that happens. Do we want to do it again? I would probably say no, because I know how hard it is. But I also know myself and my like just like I have a bit of a like an addictive personality, and so like you get an idea and then you can't not do it, and so like that will probably happen again, no matter what happens, and then I'll just find myself back into it.
Yeah. it's like having kids. You forget about what it was like changing diapers, and then you okay, let's do it again, and and
Oh yeah, that's another perfect tie into parenting. Like, yeah, you forget about all the sleepless nights, and then the kid is like, 2 years old, 3 years old, things are getting better. It's, oh yeah, let's have another one.
yeah, 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 yeah. So Ben, AI is really transforming the way that we work, and team is leveraging AI to transform the way that procurement teams work. But how do you see this evolving in the future? Right? Where do you see us in the next 10 years, or where would you like to see us? Is it more like embed, AI embedded with humans and humans leveraging AI to its fullest extent? Some things getting replaced. What are your thoughts on that topic?
Mhm. Yeah, really, really fascinating question. And it's, I'll give the kind of like weak answer first, which is it's hard to know. And the reason why it's hard to know is because I think like the pace of AI advancement is already outpacing Moore's law by like 3x or something, right? And
Yeah,
so to ask the question of like 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, like 5 years down the road, it would be like 10 cycles of like doubling of like power of AI, right? It's like
right.
it's like doubling every 6 months or so. So it's impossible to say what it will be like in 5 years. But I think just looking at the trend of the last, I don't know, 6 months, 12 months, we're seeing um, people like, like myself, probably like you and others who are just, curious and adopting AI as early adopters, using tools like ChatGPT in your daily work life to handle small tasks. Like, I use ChatGPT probably, I don't know, 10 times a day for like
Yeah.
random little things.
Yep.
And now you see companies like Team included building agentic systems which automate workflows. So we're automating this workflow for sourcing teams and procurement teams, and that's a bit more involved than just doing a simple task like, okay, hey, ChatGPT, help me write this blog post, right?
Yep.
So I think like what we're seeing is this evolution from task-based automation to like workflow automation. And then the natural evolution there, which you could imagine like kind of logically, is automating an entire job, right? So
Yeah.
if you have a sourcing team of like 10 people, then maybe you can like either, 10x your output using team, or you can do it with like far fewer people.
Right.
So there's like a kind of efficiency gain. And so I see that happening, and I see, that could happen for, engineering jobs, that could happen for procurement, that could happen for certain types of sales roles as well. Um, and I think one thing that could impact B2B enterprise software companies, especially those who are building like on top of AI, is pricing model. And so if you sell software to companies, you are constantly fighting for budget. And actually now, which is like, end of the year is like the time when most companies are planning their budgets. You're having all these conversations. So there's like a dedicated software budget, and you got to be included in that to have a chance for selling in 2025. Otherwise, if you come in like mid-year 2025, you have to fight for some like give and take, right? So I think by automating, or kind of like, I don't want to use the word replacing, but um, by by building a system that can do like the job of what a person can do today, I think that pricing models are also going to evolve. And so the classic seat-based model, the volume-based or like usage-based model may not actually be the most optimal, like in terms of like maximum value capture from a sales perspective, may actually be to tap into a company's headcount budget.
Right.
And so if you're planning 2025 and like here's our headcount, like, you know, you could make a fairly straightforward case to tap into that budget versus getting a software budget, and that may be more optimal. So I think there's going to be evolutions on that side in terms of pricing.
Very, very interesting. And I love what you said. It's scary. When you say AI is doubling its power every 6 months, It's insane, but it's happening. It's really happening with, in front of our eyes.
Totally.
Um, let's talk a little bit about building a successful team, right? Um, what do you think are the most important aspects of building a strong and successful startup team? And how do you keep them engaged, and is that even a thing? Do you, if you have to keep them engaged, is that the right team? Or but how do you foster innovation within your team as well? A lot of questions in one, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
but
yeah. That's okay. Yeah, I mean, I'll come back to the like just that startups are really hard, and early stage when you're just getting started, either the founding team or the first group of folks that you hire around the founding team. Um, I think there's a bit of self-selection happening because a career Microsoft employee or like big company employee that is comfortable in the structure and the process and the like the machine is likely not going to be attracted to a very, very early startup that's pre-product market fit or even like pre anything. So there is a self-selection of like stage of life and personality and all of these things. And it comes back to like just startups are a lot of work and you have to, it's unpopular to say, but like you can't do the things that you used to do if you're really, really going to be successful in a startup. Like you have to, like, what are you willing to not do? Like, are you willing to not spend time with your family? Are you willing to not exercise? Are you willing to not sleep? Are you willing to not have friends? Like, these are all real questions that you have to ask yourself if you are going to do a startup as a founder or join a startup like that's early. So like you have to work so hard when you're doing a startup. So to tie this back to your question, um, the people who you do it with have to share the same like values and that have to be in the right stage of life where they are willing to make these sacrifices and they're willing to work super hard. Because there's just no way around it. There is no like work-life balance. Like that's not real in startups. Like your entire life is the startup. So so I would say that that's the most important thing. Like working super, super hard is the most important thing. Um, and then just tying back to customers and like the volume of customers that you need to talk to develop conviction and develop validation in your ideas, and you're going to get lots of ideas every single week, every single month. Like you need patience and you have to be have a growth mindset and be like a natural optimist, which I think is also a bit of a self-selection.
yeah.
Like a pessimist who thinks the world is going to end is probably not going to do a startup. But yeah, it's chaotic, but also I think there's like a calculated chaos to doing a startup. And so like I personally don't feel like worried or scared or any of these emotions, which I think are pretty natural human emotions to have when you talk to like 10 straight people and they're like all like this thing sucks. Like that's just normal and it's like part of the process, it's part of the learning. So you just have to be comfortable with that. Um, yeah, and then to your question around fostering innovation, I think that also comes back to the stage. So for a company like us, which is just 4 people, it's not hard to foster innovation because we're all feeling that sense of urgency that we're like, it's just on our mind constantly. Like there's no sitting back and being like fat and happy or anything. We're just like constantly on. And when we hit 10 people and 25 people and 50 people, like those inflection points, there's going to have to be some other type of process that's injected into the company. And this will depend on remote, in person. And for us, we're all remote. I think we're going to build the company remote. So there'll be different things that we have to do to continue to drive that level of urgency and energy.
Very good. What's next for Tim? What's coming your way?
Well, we just launched our product a few weeks ago. So it's in market. We're kind of open for business. We're having amazing conversations and it's just execution. So we're executing on, 2 fronts, one product development and two go to market. And so we From a stage perspective, we did a pre-seed round. And so like, every pre-seed company wants to be a seed company. So like, well, the next, step for us would be to accumulate the traction and the signals and to, have our first set of really, really like rabid supporting customers. And we'll raise a seed round, and then we'll use that money to grow both, development and go to market. And then we'll use those resources to expand the product offering, get more customers, and use that to raise a Series A. And so there's it's fairly straightforward, I guess. Like we want to grow as fast as possible, and by doing so, we want to fulfill this mission of ours, which is to help buy side and sell side like make really, really good decisions and make the data instantly available to them.
Exciting times. How old are your children?
Sorry, what was that?
How old are your kids right now?
Oh, the kids. We have a son who's 5. He started kindergarten this year, and then we have a daughter who's 2.5, and she's still at home, but we'll probably send her to preschool soon. But yeah, this is a fun age.
Yeah. So my final random question is, what do you do when you are not working? You kind of answered that before because you said, I don't have time for hobbies, I don't have a lot of time for friends, and I have 2 little kids. So I will imagine that the rare time that you have spare, you spend it with your little kids.
Yeah, family. So outside of work, and by the way, this is another reason why I like working from home, and like all of us in the company, we all work from home, is because you don't have the commute. And so like I can just
Yep.
pop out after this call and then go and spend time with our daughter and, make sure everything's okay. And if I need to help out with something, I'm just available. But yeah, outside of work, family time, and then just, try to get as much exercise in as possible. So those 2 things, just family and some type of exercise.
When you do that, I have 2 little kids as well, a little bigger, but 7 and 9. But um, I keep going back to the quality time, right? And it's so hard for me. It's not that I'm putting so many hours, but I'm always kind of on, right? I'm always kind of and as a CEO and someone that is working with customers and trying to close deals or to be there for customers, it's kind of hard not to do that. How do you manage that? And do you like put your cell phone away? How do you are able to be there for your kids?
I'm not so good at that, to be honest. And it's something that I need to work on. I need to be better about being like fully present with my kids and with my wife outside of work, especially on weekends. But like you said, like as the CEO, founder, there's a lot of things going on. There's a lot of pressure, and in a good way, I like the pressure. I think I perform well under pressure. It's like more of an excitement than a pressure, but it keeps my mind in work mode like almost all the time. Like
Right,
from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to sleep, like I'm thinking about something in the business,
right.
whether it's a deal or a feature or a customer or just, it's very, very difficult to turn off. And so if you have a tip, I would love to hear it. It probably just is a discipline thing. And I just need to work on it.
We I wish I had. I was asking you to get a tip from you, but no, no. I think yeah, I try to have like very intense moments, right? Like have it's not so much the amount of time, but the quality of time. So like I don't know, like dinner, like setting up the table and sitting in the table and asking them like very purposeful questions that at the beginning, or even to my wife. Yesterday, I was doing it with my wife, and she was like looking at me like, "You are being weird," because I was like just looking at her and going like, "How was your day?" And at the beginning, it was weird, and then it turned into a nice conversation. And what I explained to her was like, "Look, I feel like I don't pay as much attention as I should, so I'm trying to just be have this in. This is what I'm focusing. It sounds weird at the beginning, and then we just get on a conversation and my cell phone is away and I'm just
Mhm.
looking at her, right?
Yeah.
I try to do it as much as I can, but it's hard.
Yeah, I like that discipline of like just putting the cell phone away. Um, that will probably help. I don't know if it will help up here, but but yeah, another thing that I'm doing is just our son's school is like really close to our house, so I just walk him to school every day. It's like a 10-minute walk each way, and so that's just good quality time where we can chat and also get some exercise. So what I do is I throw on a weighted vest, and
Oh,
so I walk him to school in a weighted vest, so it's like doubles as like some zone 2 cardio, and then like I'll pick him up, I'll wear the vest, and I'll like walk around. There's like a park. I'll leave like 20 minutes early and just like get a bunch of walking in with a weighted vest, and then I'll pick him up, and then we'll walk back home. So it's like a little hack.
I love that. I love that. I might do something similar. Um, Ben, this has been an amazing conversation. Thank you so much for sharing about what you're doing, your story, what comes next. A lot of lessons, a lot of valuable advice that you provided here. I appreciate you, and I hope that we can do this again sometime in the future.
Thank you for having me. All right.